Woo! As the Nature Boy would say, Nature Boy tribute to start it out. Welcome, everybody, to the Off Base Podcast. The podcast carefully crafted to remind you to suck a fat one if you think you're the only one. I'm your host. I'm the Rocky Mountain no-name Jackass. And it is 63 degrees here in the city of Aurora at 7:48 in the a.m. on Tuesday, August 16th, 2022. First official day of school. Yeah, I made that rhyme, sucker. Chaw time. All right. Off we go into the wild blue yonder. Starting out from a different location this year because we do not have 3 children in 3 different schools. We have 3 children in only 2 different schools. So last year when I would drop off the olders, their middle school and high school are adjacent to each other. So as soon as I dropped them off, one went one way, one went the other way. But not this year. Stepdaughter has made the transition. She is officially in high school. She is a freshman. So now I get to drop them off both at the same spot. However, found out some bad scheduling news from stepson this morning. He has pep band rehearsals, actually drumline rehearsals, every Wednesday morning from 7 to 8 o'clock, which is rough because I'm already getting up at 5 to start work early, start work at about 5:30. And I work East Coast hours, right? And I start at 5:30, which is 7:30 East Coast time, such that I can take an hour and a half in the morning to drive these people to school so I can get back and get in, a 9-hour day. So if I start at 5:30 and then we leave for school at 7, I get back at about 8:30. It's basically like starting at 7, I guess. Yeah. And anyway, and then I work till 4. So 7 to 4, it's a 9-hour day with some time in between for lunch. But now with stepson having to do that now, on Wednesdays we have to leave at 6:30 in the morning instead of 7. And I have a regularly scheduled bi-weekly meeting on Wednesdays at 6:30. So it's like, oh, fuck. But that's all right. I don't think I'll be missing much. Plus, my manager can fill me in on whatever it is that I missed. Excited for my son, who's going into the 4th grade. He seemed rather chipper this morning. Actually, they all kind of did, and I kind of do too, because this is the routine that I was used to last year, which is getting up at 5, start work at 5:30, take them to school at 7, get back at roughly 8:15, eat breakfast, and then work from 8:30 until 4. That was basically my routine. And now we're back in it. Just like that. Summer vacation is over. Now, summer's not over. Although if you're in Colorado, you might think yourself otherwise. It's cold and drizzly starting last night into today. I am getting excited for stepson in that he will be playing the football games and he will be leading all kinds of different, like, what do I want to say? Like in between plays. Like if the band plays something, he's leading it because he's playing the bass drum. He's in the drum line. Kid's loving it, man. Very fired up for him. I do have to teach him how to change a tire. See if he and I can find some time to do that this weekend. And then we got to try to find this kid a job after he gets his license. That'll be the time. That'll be the day that'll be the day when I die. I don't want to die. I kind of like life. Life is good. Let's keep it rolling, everybody. All right, so switching gears from the drop-off with the children. Work-wise, work is going good. I think we'll talk about the economy today. There is a fella, I talked about him a little bit last year, by the name of Keith McCullough. And I used to watch Keith come on CNBC's Fast Money I think he was either an analyst or he was running a hedge fund. And he had wonderful insights back during the financial crisis. I watched him all throughout, like 2007, 8, 9, coming on CNBC's Fast Money. I think I just said that. But since then, he has continued on in the financial services industry, but he's developed a very specific way of analyzing the markets real time. Doesn't go on hope, doesn't go on valuations, which can be misleading oftentimes. He just goes by the data. What the data is telling him. And what data are we talking about here? Well, if we were to narrow it down, he has a GIP model that he separates into quads, which you could, if you wanted to, separate it three-dimensionally. But the G and the I, G stands for growth, I stands for inflation, and P stands for policy. So he measures and maps the United States economy, and actually economies all around the world, using their GDP and using their CPIs. And if you don't know what GDP and CPI are, I will tell you. GDP is gross domestic product, which is one of our best measurements, our widely used measurements of growth, and CPI, which is consumer price inflation. And what's so funny about that, I'm going to take a little bit of an aside right here, is that the government over the past 50, 60 years has changed the definition of inflation so as to abdicate themselves from responsibility of it. Because back in the day, if you look at an old Webster's dictionary, and I actually did do this, Old Webster's dictionary will define inflation as an increase in the supply of money. Whereas nowadays, inflation is defined as an increase in the prices of goods and services. You see what they're doing there? You see what they're doing there? They're transferring the responsibility of inflation from the government, who is in charge of the supply of money, to the companies that sell the goods and services. That's not fair. That's not fair at all. Because any good business person will tell you that what they're trying to do, they're not ever trying to scam consumers. What they're trying to do is to provide the highest quality goods and services at the lowest possible price. Why would you do that? Well, so that people keep buying and using your shit. That's why you would do that. So, if companies do raise prices, it's only because they have the power to do so. In other words, the consumer will pay higher prices for whatever good or service that they are selling. However, if you increase the supply of money, now you are having too much money chasing either the same amount of goods or fewer goods, in our case here in the United States because of the pandemic, and it's fewer goods because of the supply chains that were cut off. So we had a double whammy when it came to the pandemic. Government told everybody, hey, don't go to work. So nobody was producing anything. A bunch of services were cut off. So many small businesses went out of business during the pandemic because of that. So the supply of goods and services went down. However, the government then mailed checks out to everybody, including me, which they didn't have to do. In some cases, people were making more from their government checks than they were at their jobs. So, what do you got? You've got a decrease in the supply of goods and services. You have an increase in the supply of money. Guess what's going to happen to prices? Yes, they will go up. And oil is the best example of that right now, and how, I mean, I have heard politician after politician come out on TV and be like, those oil companies are greedy, they're greedy oil companies. What? Folks, Joe Biden, and this is not a political rant, one way or the other. This is just the facts. Joe Biden, when he first entered office, basically declared war on the fossil fuel industry, saying that we got to go solar, which, you know, on some level, I agree with. We have to find a way to wean ourselves off of fossil fuels because of the damage that it is doing to the planet. However, you can't just all of a sudden declare war on the fossil fuel industry without having the alternative energy sources in place to replace them. So all he did was he declared war on fossil fuels, but nothing was really in place to step in and substitute for what the hell was going on. So, what happens? Well, what happens is oil companies are not allowed to drill in all kinds of different regions. They have specific regions in which they can drill, but they're not. And when we had a low supply of oil, when people started going back to work, well, guess what was going to happen to the price of gas as time went on? Yeah, that's right. It's going to go up. There's no more supply coming on the market. And I looked at Exxon's and ConocoPhillips' balance sheet. In terms of the money that they were putting into exploration and production since the pandemic, it has remained constant, which means they're not producing any more or any less oil. So, big news flash to the politicians, they're not greedy oil companies. Think about it, people. If at this is the wrong way to put it, but at the peak of the pandemic, or the worst of the pandemic, that's probably a better way to put it, oil prices actually went negative. All right. Now, if you're an oil company, are you going to start putting a whole bunch of supply out onto the market when oil is actually, oil futures are negative? Or at the very least, I think they got down like a couple months out. Futures contracts were like about $30 a barrel. It's like, why are you going to put a ton of supply on a market that it already has depressed prices? You're not going to make any money. But if oil gets up over $100 a barrel, which it did about 3 months ago, topped out at 130, don't you think oil companies would be scrambling to get oil onto the market so they could sell it at $100 a barrel instead of at 30 where it was at the worst of the pandemic? I would. But guess what? They're not drilling. They don't have the oil to put on the market. That is the point. So I don't want to hear another... I'm going to hear about it, obviously. I'm just some no-name jackass. But I don't want to hear another politician coming out and telling me that oil prices are high because of the greedy oil companies. You're out of your fucking minds, man. That's not how it works. Oil prices are high, gas prices are high, not because of greedy oil companies, but because of greedy politicians who wanted to push their green agenda without having the substitute in place. Period. Full stop. Oh, that was a killer argument made by me. Now, back to Keith McCullough. So Keith has been developing a model over the past decade, maybe even more, past 2 decades, that measures the growth of the economy versus inflation. Inflation, quote unquote. As well as Federal Reserve policy, whether or not they are raising or lowering interest rates. And correctly, since last November, and Keith has done this for the last 2 recessions, he is not afraid to tell you that he's done this the last 2 recessions. He has called them because of his measuring and mapping of the data. And I wish I had enough money to subscribe to his service and to trade on it, but I don't. However, I am using his advice to guide my retirement fund, which I can do with my company, which is good. I can have it self-directed. And he has identified since last November that the United States economy is entering what he calls Quad 4. And in Quad 4, so if you just think of it with an X and a Y axis, with I believe it's growth on the X and inflation on the Y. It could be switched. I don't know. But when you have both decelerating, if you have growth decelerating along with inflation decelerating, that is what puts us into a Quad 4. If you have growth decelerating and inflation accelerating, that is a stagflationary environment, which may hit people even worse than a deflationary environment, because especially for people who lose their jobs in a recession, now they have to pay even higher prices for the stuff that they need, which is shelter and food. It sucks. But Keith has been correctly forecasting the United States Quad 4 environment since last November, and as far as I can tell from watching his videos and reading up on automatic emails that I get every weekend from him, he sends out weekend updates that I subscribe to. I don't pay anything for them; they're free. But according to his models, the U.S. should continue to be in a Quad 4 recession for the next 4 quarters. Yikes, everybody. Which means, even though the markets have had a tremendous bear market rally since the June lows, that we could be seeing a turn very, very soon, and a turn that could be quite drastic for a lot of companies. Because with the Federal Reserve also raising interest rates, a lot of smaller companies who were riding the coattails of easy borrowing will now find it harder to meet their debt obligations. And some of them will go out of business if they don't take drastic measures. One of them that comes up a lot, I think, is Coinbase. I think that's the crypto exchange that came up, over the pandemic. Apparently made a lot of money during the pandemic times as people were going nuts trading cryptos. But now that crypto has collapsed and people aren't trading that money anymore, and they're not getting any extra money from the government, well, you saw a 90% decline in Coinbase's stock price. I think it's Coinbase. For some reason, I think my mind is trying to struggle for the right company. I think it's Coinbase. Anyway, 90% decline in stock price, and they also went through a round of layoffs, and a lot of bigger companies as well, are going on hiring freezes. Apple, biggest company in the world, is not going to be hiring people for about a quarter or so. So when we had the jobs number come out, the July jobs number that came out first week of August, and it said that the economy added 500,000 jobs. That was weird. That was weird to hear, with the number of big companies, important companies, either doing layoffs or going on hiring freezes. And the big assumption there is that because of the higher prices that we're now paying for food and shelter and energy, that a lot of people are taking on second jobs so they can make ends meet, which is what caused the increase in the number of jobs, quote unquote, created in the month of July. However, my fear going forward is that we're going to start to see jobless claims continue to rise, and the unemployment rate also continue to rise, as companies still figure out what to do about these higher prices, these higher input costs. So it's going to be a tricky 4 quarters, everybody. Tricky 4 quarters. Read up on it as much as you can. Try to adjust accordingly. I think you're being given an extraordinary gift right now with the lift in the markets. If you have a chance to lighten up on positions or sell calls, I say go for it. but I'm not a registered financial advisor. Look at my man Moto. Moto, look at the shape you're in, man.
Moto,
Jesus Christ.
no, sir. I work out every now and then, just a little bit.
You need to see this?
You're fine.
Okay.
Moto. Have a great day, my friend.
Thank you. Roll Tide.
Trust me, I see it. I see it.
That dude is phenomenal. What's unfortunate, I heard that he was making inappropriate comments to some of the females that were coming through. I don't know what he said, but he's always been nice and supportive and positive to me. And even when I watch cars in front, he does the same thing. But apparently he was just commenting on how some of the women looked, and I don't know what he said, but they didn't like it. But it looks like he just maybe got a slap of the wrist and he's still working here, which is fine by me, because that dude brightens my day every time I see him. So here we are, back on base, everybody. Can't see downtown Denver from here because we got some drizzle going on, a little bit of drizzle, cloud cover. However, with that being said, like I said, the energy from the kids this morning and from me is good. And I'm looking forward to the day, looking forward to the opening week here to start school. I might even have like a little get-together for our cul-de-sac on Friday night, because now the COVID restrictions are lifted, we're allowed to have, gatherings. We're allowed to hang out with people. And one of the things that goes around our cul-de-sac is this pink flamingo statue. And if you have the pink flamingo statue, then you have to have a party. Not a big party, just, have people over or whatever. So the pink flamingo is now in front of our house. So we'll see what we can't do for Friday coming up here. All right, everybody. That's going to close it out for the second edition of this school year of the Off Base Podcast. I wish you all a lovely, lovely Tuesday, and I'll smell you tomorrow.